Imagine yourself on your first night in a tiny apartment on the 5th floor of a bright orange apartment block in Mladost 4, a neighborhood on the edge of the urban sprawl of Sofia, Bulgaria. You've just moved in and it's 108 degrees. So far, you've figured out how to buy a watermelon and that's about it. Tomorrow, you'll head on your first ever European road trip across the Bulgarian mountains to bask in the sunny waters of the Black Sea coast, then over the Turkish border into bustling Istanbul. Welcome to my life as a teacher abroad. And by the way, welcome to the Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast, a podcast for English teachers in search of creative teaching strategies delivered in the amount of time it takes to do your ironing or alphabetize your choice reading library for the 100th time. I'm Betsy Potash, and I'm glad to welcome you to episode 29, A Beginner's Guide to Teaching Abroad. This episode is brought to you by the Facebook group Creative High School English, where over 1,000 creative teachers from many corners of the world are sharing their questions and creative ideas. We hope you decide to join the conversation. In this episode, I'm going to share a little about my own experiences teaching English literature, not ESL, abroad at an international school. By the end of the show, you'll know how to apply for a job abroad and what some of the benefits and pitfalls are. Though it doesn't fall exactly in line with my usual shows about creative teaching strategies, my time abroad has helped to define my work in many wonderful ways. I have no doubt that the experience of working and living abroad, if it's something that you want to do, is going to inspire you in many wonderful, creative ways, both personally and professionally. If you've always wondered what it would be like to stash your stuff in storage and head for the airport, then this episode's for you. Let's start by talking about why you might want to teach abroad. So based on my own experiences, there are 3 major reasons why I would suggest considering teaching abroad. The first one is that it will expand your horizons so much and give you the opportunity to see the world. We were teaching in Sofia, Bulgaria, which put us in easy range of all of Europe and a lot of North Africa. So we could quickly step on a plane and be in Vienna or Amsterdam or Lake Bled, Slovenia in an hour and a half. We'd be paying $90 for flights that would have cost $900 from the United States. We had the opportunity to spend Thanksgivings in Amsterdam and Prague, to spend New Year's at a Slovenian torch festival, to celebrate Christmas in Venice and see St. Peter's Square be flooded like I was reading about in the news. I went to surf camp in Morocco for spring break. We just had the opportunity to go to so many places. We visited over 20 countries during our 2 years living abroad. Also, news has started to mean more to me since I've been to all these places and seen so many more locations that I'd only read about before. When there was that bombing in Barcelona on the Rambla, I could really imagine that because I've walked on the Rambla, and I've been to Istanbul, and so when there was turmoil in Istanbul, it just hit me so much harder. And I think understanding the world in that way, because you've had some experiences and met people in other places and listened to them and come to understand them better. It's just very meaningful. Another wonderful reason to teach abroad is that you'll learn about yourself and find new interests that you might never have imagined. I started my first blog when I was teaching abroad, and I've been blogging ever since in a variety of different ways. I started writing articles and becoming more serious about my professional career in that way. I learned how to cook. I even started a cooking blog. I coached a softball team for the first time because the 8th graders at our school had never played softball and they wanted to and they needed a coach. So my husband and I did it together. I took advanced yoga, which I had never done before because there was a wonderful yoga teacher at our school. And we just, we were thrown into new and different situations and we started to expand and grow so that we could take advantage of those situations. Third and finally, teaching abroad can really give you the opportunity to become a better teacher. There are going to be obstacles. There are going to be things you have to overcome and figure out. But in the process, you're going to become a better teacher. And Of course, at some schools, you may have more financing and more in service than you do in your schools at home. But for us, there was a fair amount of figuring things out and working in new situations. I started a reading program, which was really valuable to me in the long run in my career. And I might never have thought of doing it if I wasn't trying to inspire my Bulgarian students to read more in English. I also did a technology in service, so a teaching with technology workshop day for the faculty at my school. And it was the first time I'd ever organized anything like that. And it was really a good experience for me, both because I got to learn a lot about technology in the classroom and also because it put me out there as a leader at my school, and it gave me a chance to take on that role, which was really great. I also started a new faculty mentorship program at my school because there wasn't one. And in our first year, practically everybody we came in with broke contract and left. And so it was clear that people weren't having the transitional support they needed. And I wanted to have some friends who stuck around. So I helped create some of the materials for our head of school when he was recruiting so that they would understand exactly what the situation would be like, the wonders of it and the challenges, and also started this program so that teachers would have more support as they were coming into the school. So all in all, there's a lot of wonderful reason to teach abroad. You'll get to see the world, you'll learn so much about yourself, and you'll learn a lot professionally as well. Okay, so let's say that you're sold and you'd like to get a job teaching abroad. There are two major agencies that you can work through, and they're both really helpful from what I understand. We used this first one. It's called Search Associates, but there's also another great one called International School Services, and I think both of them have fairly similar processes. I'm going to tell you about Search Associates because that's the one I have the most experience with. It was very simple. We went online, we signed up with Search, we uploaded all of our materials, our resumes, personal statements, recommendations, and then we made some choices as to our preferences, what areas of the world we might want to work in, and what our interests were as far as teaching classes. And then they assigned us an agent, and that agent would email us practically every day, at least a few times a week, with schools that might fit us. And then it was up to us to decide which ones we'd follow up on. So we had to check a box and usually send a little short follow-up email if we wanted all of our files to be sent to that school. So we might get an email in the morning that said, you seem like a good fit for such and such international school in Dubai. Would you like me to send your materials? And then you go ahead and send them. And you also send a short email. Dear head of school, Dubai, I think I'm a good fit, yada, yada. Here are my materials. And these emails are really important. We found that when we showed up at the job fair eventually, because that's what all this is leading to, it was easiest to work with the schools that we had already corresponded with. So we could get tons of interviews. The way it works is you kind of walk into this huge room, you sign your name on the clipboards of dozens of different schools from around the world. And then over the course of the weekend at the job fair, you just keep showing up to all these different interviews. But the interviews that were the most meaningful to us were with an international school in Vienna and an international school in Sofia, Bulgaria. And that was because we had already had some back and forths. We had already done some research. We were already seriously considering working at these two schools. And indeed, we kind of let the process go with some other schools that didn't seem as interesting over the course of the weekend. And we had second interviews and then third interviews with Bulgaria and Vienna, and they both offered us contracts. And so then we were in kind of a crazy position where we had just a few hours overnight to make a decision. Did we want to move to Austria or did we want to move to Bulgaria? And I didn't even really know where Bulgaria was. I didn't know too much about it. I was madly Googling it, looking up travel websites about it, trying to find pictures. And you may very well be in the same position. And the ideal thing is just to have a very open mind coming into these job fairs, because there are a million different interesting schools in the world. And you may have it in mind at first that you want to move to London and teach at a school that feels a lot like home, or that you want to move to Thailand and teach at a school that's very near a certain city you've always wanted to visit or whatever, but you really want to have an open mind coming into the fair. And my husband, as it turned out, really, really wanted to move to Bulgaria. So we had lots of good chats about our future and what we wanted to do. And in the end, we decided to go ahead and move to Bulgaria. So after 2 days of interviewing in Boston at the Search Associates job fair, we flew home with contracts. We had committed to move to Bulgaria. And that's basically the process. You sign up, you email, you go to the job fair, and then lots of people leave that job fair with contracts to go and teach abroad. It was not really that hard. And so if you're interested, it's definitely worth dabbling. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the challenges of teaching abroad, because you definitely want to go into it with your eyes wide open. The biggest challenge is probably homesickness. I don't think anybody who moves abroad gets to avoid this one. There's going to come a time when the honeymoon shine is going to wear off and you're going to miss things about home. You're going to miss the food. You're going to miss your best friend. You're going to miss the smell of the air in the morning when you walk outside when you are at home. The degrees Celsius is going to rub you the wrong way. You're not going to understand some kind of local custom, and you're going to come off feeling like an idiot. And it's just going to be hard sometimes. And so it's important to recognize going in that you will experience some homesickness and have some strategies for coping with it, and have plenty of self-acceptance that it's okay to go through periods of homesickness. Another challenge that's going to come up is that things are going to be different. There are going to be new systems at your school that you're not used to at all. There are going to be things about the country that don't make any sense to you that you have to adjust to. One notable example from Bulgaria is that if you are international, you have special international license plates. And so the police pull you over on purpose all the time to check your paperwork. And we did not understand this. And we thought the police were just randomly targeting us constantly. We got pulled over like 6 times every year. And, that'll throw you off. But again, if you can kind of have an open mind, if you can expect this, that it's going to be different, it's going to take some getting used to, it's much better to go in thinking, okay, I'm going to get thrown sometimes. I'm not always going to get it. That's okay. Another challenge is that you will kind of have to put your life in storage. We put almost everything we own into a storage unit for 2 years. You could always put it in your parents' basement or your friend's garage, but you really have to kind of get rid of your stuff for a while. And we had to laugh when we moved back, because as we opened up our storage unit, we hadn't seen any of this stuff in 2 years. We hardly even remembered it. And so another option would be to just get rid of everything, basically, because honestly, by the time you get back, you may not feel as attached to it as when you left. Finally, the fourth challenge I want to be sure and mention is that getting your next job is a little bit trickier than getting your job abroad, because the hiring season for abroad is sooner, it's earlier. And so if you are like us, which seems likely, you will have to terminate your contract at your school abroad before you get a new job in the United States. And that's a little nerve-wracking. So we broke off our contracts in Bulgaria, and then we headed to a job fair in Northern California that spring. We did a bunch of interviews, and we did get a job. And the same will very possibly likely be true for you. But there is that little waiting period, and it is kind of stressful. So it's good to be aware of that going in. All right, so having identified these challenges, and they are real and they are important to know, let me talk a little bit about strategies for success. The number one thing is probably to be open-minded. I've already said this a lot. You want to be open-minded about what country you end up living in. You want to be open-minded about how you handle homesickness, about all these new systems, about the way your school works, about your students' expectations. It's just all going to be different. And the more that you can relax and accept that and not feel like it's hurting you, the happier you're going to be. Another really great strategy that meant a lot to us is to build community. And we didn't really get this the first year. We tried, but the people we were working with had a lot of different struggles, and it was hard to build community. But by the second year, we were getting the hang of it. We were having weekly potlucks for the international faculty to bring everybody together. I had started this new faculty mentorship program. We did fun things like a nacho competition for Cinco de Mayo. We were coming together. I went to surf camp with a colleague. We went to Vienna with several colleagues. Things were getting easier. And the more you can kind of reach out and invite another teacher to do something together, or invite all your fellow international teachers to go watch soccer together, or whatever it is, it's really great to have people to talk to about the challenges and people to enjoy the benefits of teaching abroad with. Another strategy for success that worked really well for us, and I was lucky that my husband was constantly championing this because that helped me a lot, is to travel. When you travel away from the country that you're in, not only do you get to have this great vacation and experience the wonders of some other country, but when you come back, then the new country starts to feel a lot homier because it's a lot more familiar than the country that you were just in. And so when you return, your apartment is waiting for you, and the TV of that country suddenly seems normal, and you know where the grocery store is, and just everything. When you leave and come back, it gets easier. But you also get to experience all these wonderful places, and that brings up, at least for me, it brought up my mood, it brought up my morale. It was fun to tell stories about to people at home, and it was just a really important and helpful part of the experience. Finally, take the time to dive into the culture that you're in. Like I said, I did not know very much about Bulgaria coming in, but by the end, I had so much respect for the culture. I had gotten to know so many students really well, and fellow faculty members. I got to take part in the Bulgarian dance group at my school and do Bulgarian dance in traditional Bulgarian costume at a dance concert, which was really meaningful and special to me. My husband and I did a lot of hiking in Bulgaria, which was wonderful because the city that we are in, Sofia, is not necessarily the most beautiful city. And I think people in Sofia would agree it has its challenges, but people there get away by going on beautiful hikes at Mount Vitisha, the huge mountain overlooking the city. And when we started to do the same, we were really thrilled with that. And we enjoyed working with the hiking club at our school and going up there a lot. We also found this incredible spa hotel in a tiny town called Shiroka Luka in the mountains. And it was a ski resort, and somebody had built an unbelievable hotel there, but nobody was staying there. We were actually the only people staying there. And our hotel room was like the size of the ground floor of our house now. And when we would go to meals, the chef would just ask us what we wanted him to cook because we were the only guests at the hotel restaurant. So he was just like, what do you want for breakfast? I'll make it. What do you want for dinner? I'll make it, which was incredible. And the whole experience was like $90 American dollars a night. So, getting out in the country that you're in can have some incredible benefits, as well as traveling, using wherever you're in as a launch pad to other wonderful cities around the region. Okay, so I think I could go on and on for hours about my experience abroad. I could tell you so many stories, but hopefully I've given you the basics. You know how you could apply, some of the challenges that you would face, and some of our favorite strategies for success. I really hope that if you feel the tug a little bit, that you decide to give it a try this year, or maybe next year, or maybe in 3 years, that this podcast pushes you to explore a little more, because it really was one of the most interesting experiences of my life so far, and I would highly, highly recommend it if it's something that you're at all interested in. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to check out the show notes for all the links I mentioned in this episode and a few fun photos from my own life abroad, just head to www.nowsparkcreativity.com and click on the podcast tab at the top of the page. If you enjoyed the show today, please consider leaving a review for it on iTunes or recommending it to your teacher friends. The Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. The Education Podcast Network, podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more podcast recommendations, visit edupodcastnetwork.com.